Nazi Government Structure and Philosophy by Matthew Michael Cameron Robinson Wren and Chloe. The Wehrmacht was the unified armed forces of Nazi Germany from 1935 to 1946. The designation Wehrmacht for Nazi Germany's military replaced the previously used term Reichswehr. The Wehrmacht formed the heart of Germany's political military power. In the early part of World War II, Hitler's generals employed the Wehrmacht through innovative combined arms tactics. The Wehrmacht's new military structure, unique combat techniques, newly developed weapons, and unprecedented speed and brutality helped protect them from all of their enemies. The OKW was the Armed Forces High Command. The OKW was the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht. And it was the part of the command structure of the Wehrmacht of Nazi Germany during the war. It was created in 1938 and had the nominal oversight over the German army. Rivalry with the armed service branches commands, mainly with the Oberkommando des Heeres, prevented the OKW from becoming a unified German general staff and an effective chain of command. However, it did coordinate operations between three services. During the war, the OKW, subordinate to Adolf Hitler as supreme commander of the Wehrmacht, acquired more and more operational powers. The Kriegsmarine was the navy of the German army. It existed from 1935 to 1945, and it superseded the Imperial German Navy of World War I and the interwar Reichsmarine. The Kriegsmarine was one of three official branches of the Wehrmacht, which was the armed forces of Nazi Germany. It grew rapidly during German naval rearmament in the 1930s, and it's most famous for the use of the U-boats and the use of submarines. The OKM was the Navy High Command. This was called the Oberkommando der Marine, and it was the highest administrative and command authority of the Kriegsmarine. It was divided into 6 sections. The top was the Oberbefehlshaber der Marine departments, then the Sekretariatsleitung, the Marine Commandant, the Marine Waffenamt, the Allgemeines and finally the Konstruktionsamt. The Luftwaffe was the air force of Nazi Germany. It was the aerial warfare branch of the German Wehrmacht during World War II. During the interwar period, German pilots were trained secretly in violation of the Treaty of the Leipzig Air Base. With the rise of the Nazi Party and the repudiation of the Treaty of Versailles, the Luftwaffe was established on February 26, 1935. It was instrumental in contributing to German victories throughout the war because of the support it gave the troops. The OKL is the Air Force High Command. This is called the Oberkommando der Luftwaffe. It was created on February 5th, 1935, and in 1939 the Luftwaffe was reorganized through the OKL. The credit for the formation of a true Air Force High Command goes to General der Flieger Gunther Korten, commander of the Air Fleet 1, and his chief of operations, General der Flieger Karl Kohler. The Abwehr. This was the division of military intelligence in the Nazi Party. It existed from 1920 to 1945. Its purpose was for defense against foreign espionage, which was an organizational role which evolved considerably over time. As part of its implied task of counter-espionage, the Abwehr gathered both domestic and foreign information, and most of it was human intelligence and nomenclature. The SS. The SS was the Schutzstaffel, which was a major Nazi Party military branch that was ruled by Adolf Hitler. From 1929 until the collapse of Nazi Germany in 1945, the SS was the foremost agency of surveillance and terror within Germany itself and the occupied territories in Europe. The main two constituent groups were the Alamein SS, the General SS, and the Waffen SS, the Armed SS. The Alamein SS concerned itself with police and racial matters within the German Reich, whereas the Waffen SS consisted of combat units of troops within Nazi Germany's military. Blitzkrieg. This is a German term for lightning war, which was a war style used by the Nazi Party throughout the war. It's a military tactic designed to create disorganization among enemy forces through the use of mobile forces and locally concentrated firepower. Its successful execution results in short military campaigns which preserve human lives and limits the expenditure of artillery.
Nazis took power over an economically and politically torn Germany. They used Jews as their scapegoat. Jews were blamed as a source of problems in Germany, including political, social, economical, and ethical problems. Two examples of political problems were the law for the restoration of the professional civil service, which was enacted on April 7, 1933, and the Nuremberg Laws of 1935. These laws segregated Aryans and non-Aryans and set Jews up for discrimination. An example of social problems were the destruction of synagogues, which was a very prevalent problem throughout Germany, and an example of an economical problem was the destruction of stores because it took away the Jews' source of income. Some ethical problems were racism and stereotypes, which were the underlying problems which bred a hatred towards Jews and led to anti-Semitism. Thanks, guys.
Aryan race. The Aryan race was a racial grouping commonly used in the period of late 19th century to the mid 20th century to describe the people of Europe and Western Asian heritage. While originally it was meant as a neutral ethno-linguistic classification from the late 19th century onwards, the concept of the Aryan race has been used as a form of scientific racism, a pseudoscience used by proponents of ideology-motivated racism and supremacism, such as doctrines of Nazism and neo-Nazism. Aryanism developed as a racial ideology that claimed that the Aryan race was a master race. See you guys later.
The implementation of Nazi philosophy involved a great deal of state-enforced racism. There was anti-Jewish legislation, including the boycotting and eventual closing down of Jewish-owned or run businesses and stores. To do this, Nazi officers would sometimes go into stores and break the windows, kick down the doors, and ruin everything inside, and the Jews couldn't fight back because they didn't have like the weaponry that the officers did. Jewish children were removed from schools, and eventually almost all of the Jews were deported to designated ghettos. And as for the children that remained in schools, the education system changed to teach children Nazi ideals so they would be influenced to agree with it. And Aryanization, as we talked about before, was definitely a factor of implementation for their philosophy. It's important to note that there was not just implementation against the Jews, but also anyone who did not fit Hitler's ideal of who should be an Aryan person. So at first, Hitler and the Nazi Party wanted only to remove the Jewish people from normal society, but as this progressed towards the end, it changed to Hitler's plan called the Final Solution, and it would result in the killing of all the Jews in Europe. That was his main goal. And to begin this, the Einsatzgruppen, or mobile killing squads, I just don't know how to say that word, were used to wipe out entire Jewish communities, but this was soon determined to be an ineffective method. Thus, it led to the deportation from the ghettos and a move to 6 massive extermination camps. And this is horrible to say, but it made for a more effective way to mass exterminate people, and in the end, the Final Solution ended up killing millions and millions of people.
How Hitler came to power. Hitler's rise to power began in 1919 when Hitler joined the political party called the German Workers' Party, who later then changed their name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Hitler became a high power role in this National Socialist German Workers' Party. When Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, that's when he seized total control. Hitler persuaded the cabinet to declare a state of emergency and end individual freedoms, including freedom of press, speech, and assembly. Hitler also used war propaganda to further his power and make himself look better to the people. Hitler's government structure. Hitler ran a dictatorship and ruled Germany autocratically by asserting the leadership role in which he obtained, which then called for absolute obedience of all subordinates. Through this, he gained absolute power of Germany. Hitler viewed the government structure as a pyramid, himself at the top and everyone else below him. Hitler often deferred making decisions and made those lower compete against one another. How Hitler enforced his power. Hitler enforced power primarily through terror. Many people were lured in to join the Nazi regime under Hitler's rule because of the image that was portrayed of the regime as a comradeship with striking uniforms. From then on, Hitler mainly enforced his power through the Nazi regime and made them do his dirty work.
Government structure. Cabinet. The Hitler cabinet de jure formed the government of Nazi Germany between the 30th of January 1933 and the 30th of April 1945, upon the appointment of Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of the German Reich by President Paul von Hindenburg. Contrived by the National Conservative politician Franz von Papen, who reserved the office of the Vice Chancellor for himself. Originally a coalition of Hitler's Nazi Party and the National Conservative German National People's Party, it became an exclusive Nazi cabinet when the DNVP was intimidated into dissolving itself. The Enabling Act of 1933, passed 2 months after Hitler took office, gave the cabinet the power to make laws without legislative consent for 4 years. In effect, this power was vested in Hitler, and for all intents and purposes, it made Hitler a dictator. After the Enabling Act's passage, serious deliberations more or less ended at cabinet meetings. It met only sporadically after 1934 and last met in full on November 5, 1937. Nonetheless, it grew immensely in size on paper due to the addition of the commanders of the armed services and several ministers without portfolios. Reich offices and ministries. The Federal Foreign Office is the foreign ministry of the Federal Republic of Germany, a federal agency responsible for both the country's foreign politics and its relationship with the European Union. It is a cabinet-level ministry. Hermann Göring held the office of the 4-year plan. He also held the office of the Reich Master Forester. There were also other branches of the Reich, such as the office of the Inspector for Highways, office of the President of the Reich Bank, Reich Youth Office, Reich Treasury Office, General Inspector of the Reich Capital, office of the Counselor for the capital of the movement was Munich and Bavaria, and there were various Reich ministries that looked after certain aspects of life in Nazi Germany. The legislative and judicial branch in Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany started with a legislative branch known as the Reichstag, but was disbanded in 1934 because there was not enough room for separation of powers in a totalitarian state. Most of the judicial structures and legal codes of the Weimar Republic remained in use in Nazi Germany, but large changes in the judicial codes occurred, as well as significant changes in court rulings. Most human rights of the Constitution of the Weimar Republic were disabled. Several minorities, such as the Jews, opposition politicians, and POWs, were deprived of most of their rights. The People Court was established in 1934 and dealt with cases of political importance. After the war, surviving jurists were tried, convicted, and sentenced as war criminals in Nazi Germany. Some primary sources we referenced in this presentation was Hitler's book, known as Mein Kampf, and The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. We also use various secondary sources and websites.